Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show, and John, we're into double digits for March. Can you believe that?
I can hardly believe it.
It is March 10th. This is the A block, which means we're starting just after 7 o'clock. Or if you haven't moved your clock forward, we're starting just after 6 o'clock, whichever your case may be. That is John Combest every single day of the year. Matter of fact, every single day of the last 2+ decades. John has put together the list of johncombest.com, which includes all this interesting stuff that you should know about. You should be turned on to. Not a fancy website. We call it Web 1.0, and it's very basic, but it gets the job done like, so many things. Who needs all the frills when you got the basics at johncombest.com, C-O-M-B-E-S-T. He puts on numerous links to all sorts of stories you should know about. What we do is we start at the show every single morning with this guy. What's your name again, sir? Let me turn him on.
I'm Casey Kasem.
I just turned on Casey. I wonder if Casey's happy about that. No, he's dead. He can't feel that. Okay, we start off with...
In third place...
We got to talk about them, Brad, because they're happening not just across the St. Louis area, but across the state of Missouri, across the nation, more anti-DOGE protests. In Missouri, they're organized by the American Federation of Government Employees. Brad, could you imagine government employees are protesting efficiency? That seems surprising, don't you think?
Well, John, here we go again. I'm an anti-union person when it comes to government. Unions in private sector, that's fine, but in government, I don't think they belong. But that's just me. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, hey, and your opposition of that goes way back to the air traffic control in the Reagan days. Let's get real quick to the St. Louis angle of this and the Missouri angle of this. A number of stories across the state this weekend about the AFGE, that's the government group, teaming up in different areas with progressive groups, with actually official Democratic Party organizations in some cases, to launch mass protests against Elon Musk's DOGE and against President Trump's reckless cuts. My favorite story came from St. Louis Public Radio. Imagine that, Brad. A gentleman by the name of Evie Lewis, who is the intern, the State House intern, and I believe it's a he. This person is quite androgynous, but we'll say he. I don't know what the pronouns are. He is funded by the River City Journalism Fund, Brad. They're a really good progressive group that pays the tab for Evie Lewis to go report on these things. So whether Evie was embedded with this protest group or not, I don't know. But Evie was reporting from Jefferson City, and a bunch of WashU and SLU researchers descended on the Missouri Capitol. Now, as a longtime observer of government, which you are, Brad, I'm going to give you a simple declarative sentence. And based on your experience knowing government, I want you to tell me the two things that are wrong with this sentence. Are you ready?
Go ahead. I have got my pen and paper on my clipboard here. I'm ready to take notes.
Okay, I'm just going to summarize what they did. SLU and WashU researchers traveled to Jefferson City, Missouri, to protest federal budget cuts at the state capitol on Friday. What's wrong with that logic, Brad?
Well, first off, why are they protesting on a state level when this is federal cuts, right? What good does that do?
Ding, 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 ding,
Okay.
ding. That's issue number one.
Secondly,
what else is wrong? Yeah.
On a Friday where I think anybody who knows state government knows that all the reps, at least most of the reps and most of the senators, are not in Jefferson City on Friday. Am I correct?
Yeah, they leave on Thursday afternoon. They want to get home on Thursday night, be with their family on Thursday night, or their pets, whatever the case may be, or their farm animals, depending on the level of intimacy they have with them. And then on Friday, now there are certainly people at the Capitol on Friday. There's folks who, you might be a legislative assistant, you might be working in the governor's office that happens to be in the Capitol, but that's the logical whole. If you want attention from state lawmakers, go there generally Tuesday through Thursday. And also, nobody in Jeff City really can tell Donald Trump or Elon Musk what to do with DOGE. So their time is probably it's just not very carbon friendly, Brad. You really don't need to go to Jeff City to protest federal cuts.
John, do you know what? You mentioned that came from St. Louis Public Radio?
It did, yeah.
Okay, hold on just a minute. You ready for this?
I'm ready.
Unicorn fart dust. That's right, unicorn fart dust.
I'm sorry, John.
I really thought that you were going to have the NPR jingle instead, but you went for the most recent audio drop of yours, Brad.
Elaine Cha. It's Cha, C-H-A, right? Isn't it Cha?
I think it's Choi.
Choi?
No,
Really?
I'm just making that up. I think it's Cha.
Okay, talking about unicorn fart dust. Yes.
You just like saying that word, don't you, Brad? You just haven't. Not only do you have the diet and the palate of a teenage boy, you have the bathroom humor as well. The other thing I would point to today, Brad, is that down in Southeast Missouri, the Southeast Missourian ran a piece from the Daily American Republic, which is in Poplar Bluff, and union workers organized down there with the local Democrats. You may have seen in St. Louis over the weekend, up in Florissant, there were a bunch of government protesters who held signs and yelled, things like that. On Saturday, I also linked to the Post-Dispatch had a photo gallery. There was a protest in the central rear end. There was a BBW that was jiggling a wacky sign. There was an Oriental gal that had a sign about vaccines. So there was a real skinny, gangly guy that was carrying an upside down American flag. You know, he really showed that Donald Trump, he's going to put that American flag upside down when he should just be eating a cheeseburger. You know what I'm saying?
John, I guess I find it interesting that these are the same people that if they called one of these government agencies or had some dealings with them and didn't get very good service, they would be upset. Don't you think?
They would be a Karen type.
Yeah,
they would want to talk to the manager.
Right. Don't you think that's the irony of the situation there?
I think so, Brad.
So, well, it's somebody the other day. I guess this has been like, I don't know, 7 or 8 years ago. For some reason, I had to call Social Security Administration, and I had speakerphone in my office. And when I got on I dialed the number, and it said, your waiting time is 1 hour, 52 minutes. So I literally left the office, took care of some business, got lunch, came back. I was still on the wait queue, and I set a timer. I had an egg timer. I thought to myself, I wonder how long it's going to take. And I set the egg timer, and I was 2 hours plus. And I thought to myself, let's just see how long it took. It took close to 3 hours for my call to be answered. And I'm thinking to myself, yep, that government, it's efficient, right?
It's efficient. Yeah, there's nothing that Elon could do because it's already at maximum efficiency. Hey, speaking of efficiency, can we talk about China in story number 2?
Well, let's do story number 2 right now then.
Up a notch to number 2.
A headline from the Post-Dispatch. Intrepid reporter Jack Suntrup. The headline, federal judge orders China to pay Missouri $24 billion in COVID-19 dispute. You may recall during the pandemic, then Attorney General Eric Schmidt sued China because China was essentially hoarding all kinds of personal protective equipment, the old PPEs, if you remember that acronym from the pandemic. And the case continued. Andrew Bailey is touting this as a big win. I should point out that the ruling came from senior U.S. District Judge Stephen Limbaugh Jr. And as Jack Suntrup points out, this Limbaugh is a cousin of the late political commentator Rush Limbaugh. Now, the question everybody is asking, and the point that a lot of progressives made on social media over the weekend is,
yeah, but you can get a settlement against China, but what are the chances they're going to pay?
That's actually a really fair question. Like, what's the likelihood that China's going to come out and pay? I saw the answer to that, or at least one remedy to that, on social media over the weekend, thanks to Vivek Ramaswamy. And I wouldn't have seen this post if it were not from Camelia Peterson, because she retweeted Vivek. And Vivek said, the state of Missouri just won a $24 billion verdict against China. Now Missouri can seize CCP assets in the state if they don't pay. So in other words, I guess anything that's a Chinese company, the way I'm reading this, which would be like a Smithfield Foods, which owns agricultural land in the state of Missouri. I guess the implication here is that the state of Missouri could seize any form of Chinese assets that are at least partially held by the CCP or partially held by the nation of China. I don't know. But that's the answer to the question, so what? Now, China, for their part, also had a quote about the fact that they're pretty much just not going to pay. And the person from China said, the so-called lawsuit has no basis in fact, law, or international precedents. That sounds kind of Mexican. China does not and will not accept it. If China's interests are harmed, we will firmly take reciprocal countermeasures according to international law. So the Chi-Coms aren't going to go down fighting. But anyway, good win. Schmidt was happy about it, posted to social media. AG Andrew Bailey clearly happy about it and posted to social media as well.
I saw something over the weekend, and I didn't, I can't remember where I was, and I saw this, and I took note of it, but I can't find my notes right now. It's in my phone, but I can't find that page. Isn't that great? About Bailey filing something in the federal government again. It wasn't this. It was something else, wasn't it? He was complaining about something.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing. He likes to file lawsuits.
Right.
Let's be clear about that.
It was something on Fox News, I believe it was, where they had a copy of it. It was some national story where he filed a brief or something like that. I don't know if I can find it.
Let me see. I believe he did. Excuse me. He did file something on. Oh yeah, that's right. I guess we didn't talk about this on Friday. I had this up on Friday morning. He was on Mark Reardon's show. That might be where you heard him. And he was talking. He's asking the Department of Justice to investigate Joe Biden's cognitive decline.
Yes, that was it. Yes.
And whether or not people in the White House took advantage of Biden's essentially dementia and made decisions without the president knowing which end was up.
Well, they were talking about, and part of that was the auto pen. You know what I'm talking about with that?
Yeah, they were comparing his signature, right?
Right, and they said that almost all the signatures on most of the things that he signed were identical, which means they were done with the auto pen, which essentially means he probably didn't even know about them. They were just people, hey, let's grab the auto pen.
He had no idea what was going on. And so if folks want to hear Bailey talk about that, I had it up Friday on my website. Scroll down to the Mark Reardon show. And uniquely, AG Andrew Bailey plays a role in our story number 1 today.
Well, but before we go on for that, did he file that? Was that filed Friday? Was that why he was in Reardon's show? Did he file that on Friday?
I think he filed it maybe Thursday.
Okay.
I think the day before, probably.
Okay, John, let me ask you a question. Honestly, is that ever going to do anything? Is he just having fun? Because. Is that one of these things where it's like, well, I'm going to file against the president. I'm going to file against the fact that he had cognitive disorders and nobody knew and everybody. Does anything going to happen with that?
That's a great question. So if you put that type of lawsuit in the same bucket as suing China in 2020, many people, including our friends in Missouri, laughed at Eric Schmidt and said, this is symbolism. This means nothing. This is just headline seeking. And then we end up actually getting a judgment for the United States, for the state of Missouri against China. I don't know. I mean, I think it certainly gets people talking. And anytime Republicans criticize Democrats for a symbolic piece of legislation, naming a park after a handicapped transgender veteran, we're told, yeah, but it matters to some people and it's sending a statement. Well, maybe pointing out that people in the White House took advantage of Joe Biden's cognitive decline. Maybe it sends a statement. And I'd be inclined to believe that the DOJ will actually look into this because look who's at the DOJ now. Like, they're going to listen to a Bailey on this.
Yeah, whereas before they wouldn't. I get it. Okay, let's move on to the last one, but the most important one.
The number one.
We gave a teaser moments ago that Andrew Bailey is involved in this story. AG Andrew Bailey is involved in this story. I'm going to bring us back to the Brad and John show. About a year ago, we talked about a gentleman down in Cape Girardeau County, a coroner, who was facing all sorts of allegations against him. And this gentleman was stealing money from dead people whose stuff came into the coroner's office. And he didn't seem to have a really good answer except the fact when he was charged with all these things like theft and dereliction of duty, his quote was, "I really think this is, I don't know if this is a racial issue or what, but no comment." In other words, when Andrew Bailey was looking at this gentleman's behavior as coroner in Cape Girardeau County, maybe Andrew Bailey was being racist. This gentleman, Wavis Jordan, by the way, happens to be black. So if anyone's accusing him of doing something wrong, that person that's doing the accusing is probably a racist. Well, it turns out that that former coroner was found guilty on all 4 counts. And I know we're up against time here, Brad, so I'll summarize this. And this story, I had the story up over the weekend. Folks can read the whole thing, paywall-free version from the Southeast Missourian. In short, this gentleman, every time he found a suspicious death, let's say, that might have looked like a person, we'll choose our words carefully here because we put this up on YouTube, someone who might have ended their own life, Brad, when folks made it clear that they were ending their own life, Mr. Jordan, when the body came in, would rule it a cardiac arrest because he says he didn't want to put the family through any extra heartache. So it was just easier to call it a cardiac arrest. Also, if the deaths involve, say, fentanyl or other drugs, it would lead to a lot of toxicology stuff. You'd have to do a lot of blood work. So let's just call it a cardiac arrest. You'll make the family feel a little better, and our office won't have to do a lot of work. I mean, he could join the American Federation of Government Employees with that work ethic. And my favorite thing is he stole allegedly, I shouldn't say allegedly because the judge found that he did do this. He found him guilty. He stole just a little bit of petty cash from somebody's wallet that happened to die. You know, the stuff came in. Wavis just needed a little bit of cash. What's wrong? The dead guy's not going to spend it, Brad. The dead guy's not going to go to Schnucks and buy Little Debbie's. Just take the cash for yourself. Nobody's going to miss it. So I guess what we learn here is that maybe in this case, Andrew Bailey wasn't just being racist. Maybe Wavis Jordan wasn't very good at his job. And real quick, Brad, before we go, this gentleman's qualifications for being coroner were he used to work as a school security guard. So that's pretty cool. He once drove a hearse for a funeral home, and he was also in charge of the floral department. He ordered flowers for a funeral home. So to me, that qualifies you to say what kills the person, don't you think?
That's one of those elected positions you sort of scratch your head and say, okay, that is an elected position, but shouldn't you have some training in that? You know what I'm saying?
You would think that you would want to have some medical background.
Yes,
this is part of the
exactly.
larger symptom as Republicans, and this gentleman is a Republican because Cape Girardeau County is a Republican. So often, we as Republicans are so eager to have black elected officials or black public faces or any minority public face that once we see a minority that wants a job, we think, ooh, black guy. How about you run for coroner? You've done flower arrangements before. You'd be a great coroner. And we could say we elected a black guy. How about you run for coroner? You can't just elevate people because of the color of their skin.
Yeah, I hear you. Well, okay. A dovetail into that, which we'll start in B block, is the firefighter story that happened in the city of St. Louis about the firefighter who got fired and now has been rehired, but not as a firefighter. I don't know if you know this story or not. It's not anything current, but it reminds me of that same kind of crazy story. Okay, John, you ready for a break?
I am.
Are you excited to hear some commercials?
Absolutely I am.
We'll be back.